Hey guys, it's Leah B from Prestige Veteran Medical Consulting. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, physician assistant, and former compensation and pension examiner. Today I have a very special guest on, Rebecca Deming from ProVet Legal. She is an accredited VA attorney, and we're going to discuss when it is a good idea to hire a VA disability attorney to assist you with the claims process. So Rebecca, if you don't mind giving us a little bit of information and insight into how you got into VA law and your history. I'm going to open up the floor to you.
Perfect. Hi, guys. Thanks, Leah. Thanks for having me on. It's I follow your YouTube channel and love the work that you do, and I love sending clients your way. So it's exciting to be on your channel. I've been doing VA disability law full time since 2019, but I was accredited a couple years earlier. When my husband retired from the military, I got accredited so I could understand the process and help him through, and realized it was a really important area. Before I got into VA law, I've been an attorney for over 15 years, but I spent most of my career in policy and training military, U.S., NATO forces, and UN peacekeepers, and mostly in Africa. I actually met my husband in Afghanistan. So I'm not a veteran myself, but as the spouse of a veteran, I understand a lot of what you guys have been through. And
Yeah. And
yeah,
I know you spent some time in Afghanistan, which can kind of resonate with a lot of our viewers as well, and a lot of your clients that have spent some time in that area. So thank you for your service to veterans and in every capacity, and your husband as well. From what I understand, he was a Navy Special Operations, you said, right? Or did you not
yes.
say that? He's Navy Special Operations veteran. So great guy. So I want to launch into a few questions for you. I get these questions all the time from veterans. I am not an accredited legal professional. I'm just a medical professional, so I can look at things from the medical expert side, as CMP examiners have done for many VA cases. But when it comes to the legal aspects of things, there are specialized and trained individuals that are accredited to look at these things with veterans. And so whether it's a VSO or an attorney or a claims agent, these are really great resources. So I get a ton of questions. So I just want to throw a few of them at you and see what your feedback is on them. So the first one is, do veterans require an attorney to help them file a claim?
No, absolutely not. The claims system is, at least theoretically, set up to be veteran friendly, and it's supposed to be set up in a way that you can do it yourself, at least to file an initial claim. It is more complicated than I think VA likes to admit to the public. There's a lot of nuance into how to service connect something, how different things should be rated, what evidence is needed, how they can weigh the different evidence if you've got a private opinion versus the VA exam. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, but you can certainly file the claims on your own through va.gov, or you can work with a veteran service organization like the DAV or American Legion or VFW or AMVETS or any of the other veteran service organizations that are out there. The one thing you want to do if you are working with someone is make sure that they are accredited. You don't want to work with somebody who's going to charge you up front. You should never pay someone to help you with an initial claim. So that's super important. But yeah, you definitely don't need an attorney to file your initial claim.
Okay, and you talked about accreditation, and I'm going to have a couple more questions on that. But the next question I have for you is, can any attorney, like in the United States, assist a veteran that wants, like if I'm using an attorney to help me with my estate planning, or if I sued someone or whatever, can that attorney help me with my VA claim?
No, they do have to be accredited through VA, and so that requires taking a certain number of courses through VA. VA will verify that you're in good standing. They'll do a background check, make sure that you understand the basics of VA law. So there are estate planning attorneys that have become accredited with VA. So there's some attorneys that kind of dabble in VA law, and that's a decision, we can talk more about, how to choose an attorney that's right for you. But they do need to be accredited through VA.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing you say is that some attorneys can practice in a few different fields of law. Perhaps they do VA law and maybe they also do estate planning, but it doesn't necessarily mean that just because someone does a different type of law, they also can practice VA law, right? So
Right.
they have to be accredited by the Office of General Counsel to do that.
Right. So
Do they
myself
ever do
and my
that?
law firm, we only do VA law. We only do VA disability benefits. But there are attorneys out there that, they want to take on a handful of cases. And when I first became accredited, I was not practicing VA law full time. So I became accredited so I could handle a handful of cases, but I was still working with the U.S. government on.
So do they have to be accredited in your state, or how does that work? Like if I'm in Texas, so do I have to have an accredited VA attorney in my state?
No. So VA is a federal agency,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a federal area of law, so it's not state specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you can have an attorney represent you anywhere in the country. I even have some clients that live overseas. They do military contracting or whatever. They retired and wanted to stay in Germany or Japan or wherever they were. So we can represent clients anywhere. It's really your comfort level. If you want an office where you can go in and find someone local and you can bring them the papers and sit down with them and do a physical consultation, then you would obviously want to find someone close to you. But in terms of legally being able to represent people, or even functionally being able to represent people now with the digital age and these video calls and
Mm-hmm.
electronic records sharing, there's really no reason that you would need to have someone in your area.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too, because correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of the hearings that you guys do, like whether they're, you know, these higher level reviews or supplemental claims, or if you're doing a hearing like with a judge or something, most of those are just virtual as well, right? Either telephonic or video chats.
Almost all of them are virtual now. There's a handful of times where there's a reason why we would want to do something in person. If the client needs a little extra TLC, or
Mm-hmm.
there might be certain reasons why we want to do something in person. But for the most part, I think, especially after COVID, most of the veteran law judges, the administrative law judges that work at the board, they prefer to do it virtually. A lot of them are working from home too.
Okay.
Um, the regional offices all have video teleconference capabilities, so you can call in. And actually, now a lot of the employees at the different regional offices. So you might have somebody who's working for the Atlanta regional office,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually live in Tennessee, because COVID has kind of allowed for remote working. So even on the VA side, their employees aren't necessarily located. So you might go into their office and then have the hearing officer zoom in on a screen to see you. So yeah, everything really is remote friendly these days.
Yeah, that makes things a lot more convenient. I know they've relaxed a lot of standards as well for not even just VA health, but like telehealth in general in the US for some of the same reasons. So hopefully that's enabling veterans to get their claims processed a little faster and more efficiently, with that being, that shift. So I guess going into this for initial claims, how do veteran attorneys deal only with appeals, or do they assist with initial claims as well? And how does that work?
So attorneys are allowed to assist with initial claims, but they're not allowed to charge because, like I said, nobody's allowed to charge for initial claims, for
Mm-hmm.
assisting with initial claims. So a lot of the nonprofit organizations handle assisting clients
Mm-hmm.
with initial claims. That's why a lot of attorneys won't accept a case if the veteran had never filed a claim. That said, once we have clients in our office that we're working with, if they're like, "Hey, I didn't realize that, I
Mm-hmm.
could also file for this claim," then we, as the attorney, would file that claim for them, most likely, or we talk with them and kind of guide them through filing it on their own. Um, we would not want to send them out to a veteran service organization while we're working with them because VA only allows them to have one representative. So it just kind of muddies the water. If you sign a
Mm-hmm.
representation agreement with someone to help you file a new claim while we're working with you. We get kicked off the file and then we have to sign again, and we might miss some things in the interim.
Well, that makes sense too, because there's only so many accredited legal professionals out there, and I know some initial claims can be complex as well, but if your bandwidth is only so much, you really want to do the most good for the most amount of veterans, and a lot of times those appeals are probably more complex as well. And so, hopefully veteran service officers and some of those organizations can really help with a lot of those initial claims, freeing up y'all.
Right. And VA has a duty to assist. And so a lot of times, I mean, at least 75% of the time, I'd say VA gets it right, or they get 75% of it right most of the time. So you don't want to pay somebody or hire somebody to help you with something when VA is going to send you to an exam.
Right.
If it's a good claim, there's a good chance that the examiner is going to see that it's service connected or get it correct. So our niche area is really helping people when VA gets it wrong and when there's something that needs to be fought. And that's where we come in, and that's where our expertise adds value.
That makes total sense. So my next question for you is, how much do VA attorneys charge generally, and do veterans have to pay up front? I think you touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but can you expand on that?
Sure. So VA actually regulates how much attorneys can charge, and it has to be a reasonable amount. And that's kind of the baseline, is it has to be reasonable. VA has said that what's considered reasonable in most cases, and there are kind of outlier cases sometimes, but in most cases, it's somewhere between 20 and 33.33%. If the attorney charges 20%, then VA will withhold. So like, let's say that we win your case, I'm charging you 20%, and you get $10,000 in back pay. Then VA would withhold 20%, so $2,000, and they'd pay the attorney the $2,000, and you get paid $8,000, and there would be no exchange of money between the two of us. If you charge up to 33.33%, so there are some law firms that charge the full 1/3 of the back pay, VA won't withhold it. So you would get paid the full, in that case, you'd get paid the full $10,000, and then you'd have to write a check to your attorney for the 1/3.
And so just to clarify, when you talk about that 20%, you were pretty clear when you said it. So that's 20% of whatever that one-time payment is for that claim, right? It's not 20% for the rest of their lives of whatever their benefit is.
Right. Exactly. And I think there is that misunderstanding out there. People are like, I have to pay them 20% of what I'm going to get, like, forever. That's a lot of money. No, it's basically from the time you filed your claim, and there's some complex rules about what the earliest effective date is, but usually from when you filed your claim until when they grant it. And so if it takes VA 1 year from when you file your claim to when they grant the claim, you get 1 year's worth of back pay. And then the attorney fee gets taken out of that.
I think a lot of times what I hear from veterans is that they are very averse to like hiring an attorney because they think it's going to be this like extraordinary amount of money. And sometimes I'm like, I can't do the math or the calculations on their, time, but I can kind of ballpark look and think in my head, this is probably not going to cost you more than $500 or $1,000 for this case, depending on the case. It's not always going to be some astronomical, $10,000 bill that they get. It's very reasonable. I think that the fees that VA has allowed for this to work for veterans don't seem, crazy. They seem very reasonable for veterans.
Right. And I think when they do get higher, it's because we're able to access more back pay for the veteran. Right. And so and there's some complex laws that dictate when we might be able to take a claim back decades or to when they first got out of service after Vietnam or something. And I mean, I did recently win for a client a claim that went back to 1976 because VA made a mistake. And they never notified the veteran. They sent some letter and it didn't meet the standards of notifying the veteran. And so we were able to, but that's not something that I think a veteran would be able to do on their own.
Well, and it's a contingency based situation too, right? So basically, if the veteran entrusts you to take their case and you believe you can assist them, if for some reason it doesn't work out, they're not paying you an upfront fee to handle this. So it's very low risk for them. It's being paid sort of on that return that they're going to receive later on. And if they don't get it, then that's that, right?
Right. Right. So there's really no risk to the veteran for signing up, other than, and there are times where a veteran will come talk to me and try to, wanting to hire me, and I'll say, listen, I really think this one is simple. You should be able to do it on your own. I'm happy to help, but you might not, it might not be worth it for you to hire an attorney at this stage, because this one is such an obvious mistake if you just file this form or something. But yeah, the ones where we're trying to, where we're going through the entire claim file, looking through what's been filed throughout, since the veteran got out of service, and figure out where the mistakes were made, and get it going back, where our interests are aligned. So if we get more money for the veteran, we get paid more. I'd like to say we do it out of the goodness of our hearts, and I do get satisfaction out of helping the veterans get more money. But yeah, it helps keep our business healthy to get the most money for the veterans.
So this is going to be sort of this is a tough question, because I get this a lot, and I don't think this is the case. And you sort of led into that in your last answer. But do attorneys really drag out cases to get more fees? Is that a thing?
There might be some out there that do that. I think it's a poor business model, right? So there might be some that if they just kind of sit on it, we do get paid based on the amount of back pay. But as far as the business model, the quicker I can get through that client, help that client get the benefits that they need, the quicker I can move on to assisting a new client, or assisting that client with other benefits. And so it really, the amount of time when a claim is just sitting there, the amount of effort that it takes for me and my staff to keep the veteran updated on what's going on, follow up with VA to make sure they haven't dropped something, make sure they're still getting the exams that need to be scheduled. It's not just because it's taking longer, it's not like it's just sitting there and we're doing nothing on it. So keeping claims for a longer period of time doesn't really help our bottom line, even though I think there is kind of that misnomer out there. That said, there certainly could be attorneys out there that do the bare minimum, in any profession, not just in VA law. There's good doctors, there's bad doctors, there's good lawyers, there's bad lawyers. But no, I don't think that that's something that good attorneys are doing intentionally.
Sure. So the next question I have is something that I see quite frequently, and it's a scenario based sort of question. So if a veteran gets denied for a claim, and they say, hey, I'm thinking about hiring an attorney, but maybe I'll just do a HLR on my own, a higher level review, or I'll do a supplemental claim on my own. I'm going to exhaust these efforts first, and if they don't work, then maybe I'll hire an attorney down the road. And my thoughts are, I know we're not going to get into all of the different specifics of different types of appeals today, but my thoughts are, like, once you start removing tools from the toolkit from the attorney, it makes it more complex for you. So is it better, I guess, from my perspective as a veteran, I would think it was almost better to just hire an attorney to handle that for me right off the bat, rather than trying to do these different types of appeals, because then I'm maybe getting more denials that are stacking up, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know you and I talked about doing another episode at some point to kind of go through the anatomy of a rating decision to figure out. So there should be some information in the rating decision that should kind of clue you into why VA made this decision or that decision. Some of the decisions are better than others and easier to understand. As soon as I got a decision, I would probably run it by an attorney and say, is there anything worth appealing in here? Did they get all the effective dates right? Did they rate me correctly? There's a lot of nuanced pieces, like understanding what the possible ratings are for mental health.
Sure.
Based on my symptoms, is this the right rating? Or why did they deny this one? If you file on your own, it's if you file an appeal on your own,
Mhm.
it's usually not something that it's a double negative. It's not something we can't correct later. It's something, we can usually fix it later. It just might make it more complicated
Sure.
because if you file something, VA, you're giving VA an opportunity to dig their heels in or box you into a corner. They might be getting more medical
Sure.
opinions. And now you have 3 negative medical opinions.
Right.
And if we want to try to show that they're wrong, we've got to poke holes in 3 different VA opinions, whereas we might have gone a different route based on our understanding of the different processes and the different appeal options.
Sure.
So you can do it, and if you do it, it's not the kiss of death. I wouldn't say, oh, now I made that mistake, now I'm never going to talk to an attorney because they're going to think I did the wrong thing. But yeah, generally you're right. Like once you get a decision, I would say, hey, let's get an attorney's out. And most attorneys will look at a rating decision for you and kind of give you a free opinion on
Yeah.
what to appeal, what not to appeal, whether or not they'll take your case.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So what kind of things are important to ask when considering to hire a VA attorney? What are some questions, like if you were a veteran, that you would want to ask, or things that would be important to you in selecting a representative?
I would want to know if they do exclusively VA law and how long they've been doing VA law.
Mhm.
Because it's funny because they say that the system is set up for veterans to be able to navigate on their own, but
Mhm.
it is pretty complex. You've got the statutes, you've got the regulations, and you've got VA's internal guidelines, and sometimes there's differences between those 3. And so navigating, and understanding with the Appeals Modernization Act, which appeal
Totally.
lane to choose, there's a lot of strategy. So someone who isn't as practiced in the area might be able to technically get it right, but their strategy would be less informed because they don't have that wealth of experience with seeing how VA's been handling a lot of cases recently. For example, you can file a board appeal. I think the VA website officially says the estimated timeline or the goal is to decide board appeals within a year or something, or 18 months.
Mhm.
It's taking about 5 years to do board appeals.
Oh, wow.
So that's something that we consider when do we need to take it to the board, or can we get resolution at the regional office
Sure.
without waiting 5 years for a decision? And somebody who doesn't have that experience, it wouldn't be a wrong decision to go to the board, but it may not be the best decision. So I definitely want to know kind of what their experience is in VA. I'd probably want to know if they've handled cases similar to mine.
Mhm.
So if it's a survivor benefit case, where the validity of the marriage is at issue or something, or if it's, have they ever done Agent Orange cases where the veteran developed a type of cancer that's not on the presumptive list? Or, some of the stuff, have you handled ones where the veteran has 29 different claims or something?
Yeah.
That's those kind of questions I'd want to ask.
How about like,
Beyond that, I would say it's kind of like a comfort level. Like I'd want to talk to the attorney and see if I think that they're gonna treat me with respect, or have the right level of communication. Some people want to be able to pick up the phone and call their attorney 24/7 and have the attorney answer. And there might be some attorneys out there that are able to answer all of their clients' calls. There's other firms out there that would probably almost never have an attorney. The attorney would be the one who files the claim, but they have their paralegals and their
sure.
accredited claims reps working it up. And so you might never talk to an attorney at certain other firms. So it's kind of your level of comfort. I don't know if I would ask how often do you win. I think
Yeah. Because it's so
I
much.
get that question a lot. I think people who do this end up winning a lot of cases. There's a lot of moving pieces in it. We're not going to win cases that have no merit.
Mhm.
We're not going to try. We're not going to try to win case. We're going to talk to you about why that claim has no merit, and talk to you about what claims are worth pursuing. But I think asking, what's your win rate is kind of um, just not not a helpful question to determining which
Sure.
attorney is going to be the right one to work with.
Sure. Well, also, what about records? Like, I know you guys have a system that you can dive into to get records, VBMS, right? Do all accredited VA attorneys put in the effort and spend the time to get access to be able to pull records in that expedient manner?
They all should, in my opinion. So we have access, like you said, to VBMS, Veteran Benefit Management System. And
Mhm.
so that allows us to see the entire claim file. So everything that's been filed in your record. We don't have to put in a Privacy Act request or a FOIA request to get your record, which would take about a year to get that. And then we can see the internal notes. So we can see kind of which staff member is working on a case. And, just this morning, I sent a staff member an email saying, hey, the letter didn't say who the hearing officer is, but we need to reschedule this hearing. So we can kind of, having access to that system allows us to talk to VA employees on a more immediate level. I don't know how somebody without VBMS could provide the level of service that I would want. That doesn't mean that they're going to commit malpractice or something. I mean, usually
Right.
when you get a decision, you have a year to appeal it, so there is time to wait for the paper records to come and to request information. It's just not going to be as thorough.
I mean, I think it sort of goes back into how many areas of law do you practice in, and is VA predominantly your area of practice? Because I have worked with many VA attorneys over the years, and I recall one specifically that was lovely, that VA was not his primary area of law, and so he never had a claims file, and the only files that he had for his veteran were files that the veteran would either give him, rating decision letters and things like that. So I think, that makes it really hard if they're not able to reach in. It sounds like you have a very robust and high speed operation where you can, email, like you said, you can email someone over on the VA side and say, hey, I don't know if you can email a rater directly, but you can email a lot of these people working the claim, pull files, do things like that. So
Yeah, we're always kind of cautious because VA grants us access. I don't want to say it's a courtesy, but as a non-VA employee, we have guest access to their systems. And so we are cautious to not,
mhm.
I know you hate the term poke the bear, but
Yeah,
we don't want VA employees complaining that we're bugging them all the time and
right. Get that.
then pull our access, because it is really important for us to have access. So we use it strategically to reach out to the right people when we can't get stuff moving. We can also we can see the compensation and pension exams in real time when they get
Mhm.
uploaded, and so that, I know we've had a lot of conversations about that.
Mhm.
But if the CMP examiner gives a negative rationale and says, "Well, I don't think this is connected because XYZ,"
Mhm.
I can send you a copy of that exam, or whatever medical expert we're working with or their treating doctor, and they can write,
Sure.
you guys can review that and say, hey, the examiner said XYZ, but this medical literature says the opposite, or they missed this treatment record or something that really shows that the examiner was wrong because of this. And so that makes your opinion that much stronger than if you were just sort of shooting from the hip and saying, well, I think it's related, but not addressing the negative opinion
Totally.
that was uploaded to the VA system.
That makes a lot of sense. So I just have a couple more questions for you. What if, what if I have a VSO? And I know you kind of touched on this earlier. So can I have a VSO that's helping me locally and my attorney, or how does that work?
You can only have one representative at a time. So you can have sequential representatives, like you can have a VSO, and the VSOs might do a great job helping you get started. Some of them do a great job with appeals, but like I said, it is, and there's some wonderful VSOs out there. I mean, there's some VSOs that I really dive in and understand the nuances of the regulations, and they do this full time. Um, but there is something to be said for certain cases to have that legal training and legal understanding of the interplay between the code and the regulation and the guidelines, and the new Supreme Court case that came out last week that talks about deference to removing deference to the agency. So having an attorney who can understand that, you're just not going to get that with a lot of the VSOs. And again, there's exceptions to the rules, but I think the VSOs tend to, very generally, the VSOs tend to do a good job of knowing what forms to fill out.
Sure. Like those initial
getting
claims.
veterans started filing their claims, understanding what qualifies as service connection. But then when you get into kind of fighting them, a lot of times it's helpful to have an attorney on board at that point.
Okay. So I have one last question. So sort of along these similar lines, if I have an attorney and I want to file another claim, should I just go file the claim? Like if I just go in the VA system, va.gov, and file it, or should I talk to you first, or should I ask you to do it, or what should we do there?
You should always talk to the attorney before you file something. Depending on my clients, sometimes I'll say, hey, yep, that's fine. Go ahead and file that. You know how to work the system. Just go ahead and put that one in. But I want to deconflict it because VA, again, it's a complex system. And so sometimes there's stuff where the claims are related and the veteran might not realize it. And by filing a new claim, they might be shooting themselves in the foot. Like,
Sure.
for example, all mental health claims are rated under the same code. So they might have put in a claim for PTSD that got denied. I might be working on the claim for PTSD. I'm like, well, I'm going to put in a claim for depression. I've never filed for depression. That's a new claim. But because it's mental health, I can kind of fit that in certain ways under the initial claim for PTSD and then maybe get you an earlier effective date. Whereas if you just file a new claim,
Sure.
It's going to mess up the effective date. It might mess up which exams we're getting. So there's times where I might tell you not to file the claim at all. And there's other times where I might say, hey, don't worry about it. We'll file that for you. And then we can make sure that we're putting the right language in there so that it's VA's considering it secondary to an initially service-connected condition or on the theory that we want them to consider it on.
Well, and I'm sure you, like, if I'm 10% for tinnitus and I'm like, hey, I want to get an increase, that probably wouldn't be, situations like that where maybe we just don't know and we should probably run it by you to make sure we're not doing something that just doesn't make any sense, right?
Right, exactly, because tinnitus is rated 10%, whether it's severe or minor or intermittent or constant. So you'd be like, well, it got so much worse. I can't even hear myself think anymore. That's, sorry, you're more than likely, I always, as the attorney, there's always an exception if, under very rare circumstances, but,
Sure.
99 out of 100, 99.9 out of 100, you're stuck at 10%. And so if you put that in, you might trigger VA to get a negative medical opinion and they might sever connection. I mean, you could do kind of the best case scenario if you file something that you shouldn't have filed is you just stay put and it doesn't get you the benefit that you wanted. The worst case scenario is you do something that could mess up getting an earlier effective date or taking away benefits that you already have.
Well, I wanted to pull up real quick, pull up your website so we can let people know how to find you also, right? So ProVet Legal, right? You guys are out of Florida. Let me see if I can pull up your website here. Let's see, share screen. Sorry, guys. Here we go. So here is where you can reach Rebecca. I'm gonna put this in the video tagline, so you'll be able to see it down below, and you guys can click on her website and reach out to her anytime. But this is Rebecca's website over at ProVet Legal. Her contact information. I guess we should probably wrap up. I really appreciate you coming on. And do you have any last kind of comments on today's topic?
No, Leah, thanks for having me on. This has been a really good conversation. You asked a lot of really good questions, and they're questions that we get too. So hopefully it helped clear some stuff up for people. And there's a lot of people out there helping veterans. So I think it's good to know when to go to which type of assistance.
Well, and I appreciate everything that you do. I know I've like I said, I've worked with lots of excellent VA attorneys in the past, and you are one of them for sure. You always treat your veterans with dignity and respect, and go the extra mile and spend the time with them. So I appreciate all the amazing feedback I've had on you and your firm. And we're going to do a couple other videos coming up soon on some interesting topics for you guys. So please let us know, viewers, if you guys have any questions for Rebecca, drop them in the comments, or any other videos that you guys would like us to make regarding VA disability law. And thank you, as always, for watching. And please like and subscribe. All right. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.